I use pepper grass. Let me get this is pepper grass, and that is pickled, so it is soft and it's easy and pliable to work with. The Caspia I use for the spruce tree. I'm going to use several spray cans of paint to do the foliage. I use the acrylics to thicken up the trunks and the branches. I use this paint to do all the final painting of all the branches in the trunk.
It's Model Master.
Model Master. Lou just lost a bet. I use floral tape and floral wire and all these assorted tools, of course, to that you're going to see. Cut the wire, measure your tree, etc. So let's start by doing the hardwood tree. So I take the pepper grass and I do it actually a little bit different than this is an old, again, I've been doing it for a long, long time, and this is an old slide where I just actually took the whole branch and took the leaves off. But all of these little leaves that grow on it, you want to take off because you're going to be using the flower part. So once you've picked out the best ones, and I'm going to demonstrate that at the end because it's very, you really need to pick out the best branches to get a really good crown. So I've picked out the best ones. I've put 2 or 3 together to make the crown. And then I'm going to use 18 gauge floral wire and I put it up as far as you can go. When I do, what's the aspens? When I do aspens, because they're so straight, I try to get that wire all the way up to the top, but in this case, I don't really need to. It's going to be a maple or an oak. And then you're going to wrap it with a floral tape. And then you're going to do the same technique with a branch. So this was the very first one. Then I created a branch and it's going to have wire in it as well. And it's going to be a 22 gauge wire. It's a little bit lighter, but you'll still be able to bend them. And then I attach it to the trunk, keeping some of the branch, some of the lower part, because this is going to eventually become the trunk, and then wrap it with the floral tape. Once I get done with the structure and I'm happy with the branch structure, I'm going to thicken it up. You can see here how when I put the branches together, it really needs something right there. So I take an X-Acto knife and I make a little hole, and then I use the wood glue, Elmer's wood glue, and I'm going to insert a branch. And you'll see it, how much better it looks. And you can continue to do that. This is a finished tree, and you can see where I've added branches, and you can even add them to the trunk as well. So once your structure is done, your trunk is done, you're going to thicken it up with the acrylics. And I use a combination of white and black and the raw umber. And I mix them together and it comes up with kind of a grayish color. And I'm going to thicken up where the branches, where's my cursor? My cursor's stuck.
Use this.
Okay, I'll use it. Yeah, this one. So where I've wrapped them, you know, you want to put acrylic in there. You want to hide all that where the tape has wrapped the branches together. And you want to thicken up the trunk. And what you also want to do is make, before I make the roots, I also put in, you know, flatten your brush, use any kind of a sharp object, and just make all of the texture in there. And now I'm also making the roots. So what I do is I let it dry a little bit, because as it dries, it thickens. And then you're actually going to push that blob up against the trunk, and then you can pull it out using your brush and the spatula, and you can make the roots. This is showing how I flattened the brush and using a sharp object while that acrylic is still wet, just to make all the textures. Now that has to dry overnight. So once that's dry, the next day is when I paint the foliage. So I start with a darker color, and I usually start from the bottom. I kind of tip it away from me, and I do the dark underneath. And then what I'll do is on the top, I will do the highlighting. So I use a spruce green and I use a light green. That woodland light green, we've had such a hard time getting that. I use that for everything, especially the white birch. I love that color. It's kind of got a little olivey green in it, but it's just perfect. Kind of ties everything together. You want to make sure you use the base colors. And like what John said, don't use any iridescent colors or anything like that. You want everything to be a similar shade. Now this is very pliable, like I said, so you don't have to worry about the branches breaking. You have to be a little bit careful, but now I'm going to start painting each individual branch. Okay, trying not to get the paint on the foliage. If you do, just take a little green paint that you might have and touch it up later. But I start at the top and I paint the branches. And I work my way down the trunk. Now, when I get done with doing the basic gray, which is kind of like a gray, mix everything together. It's got a little brown, little black, little white. It's kind of a gray color, but then I will go back. You can see my palette there. I've got some brown, I've got some of the black, and I go back and forth all up into there. I put where the shadows would be, I put a darker black, where the branches would meet and there'd be a shadow. And some of the deeper, like the knots and whatever, you can put the black in and just keep going back and forth until it looks good. And then you can take some white or some earth and take a paper towel and take almost all of the paint off and then just very lightly go over things to highlight it. And then there's this gray green, which is awesome. And this is how you can make the moss. So you just take a very, very little bit of that, wipe it mostly off on a paper towel, and then just kind of blot it onto the trunk. And it looks like moss. It's a great color. And then when you're all done, you just spray the whole thing with dull coat just in case there's any shininess left, because the acrylic paint, the thick acrylic that you used in the beginning is shiny. So if any of that is shining through or anything is shiny, you want to just dull coat the whole thing to make it dull. And I also trim off the bottom because when I did the roots, I put it on a piece of parchment paper. And when you take it off, you want to trim, all the excess off with just a small sharp scissors. So now we're gonna plant a couple. These aren't the same ones I was making. These were two that I made. You notice they're a little bit older growth. They have thicker trunks, but we're gonna plant them just to show you how that's done. So here's an area that I was working on that's like a field grass, and I cleared a spot for where the tree is gonna be. And I punched a hole with an awl, and then I put glue on. In this case, there was a nail on here. You're gonna see a method now that I use with the wire. It's easier just to use the wire instead of an additional nail. But in this case, I had a nail on it.
I want to interject just for a second. One of the fellows asked how we plant the trees. The reason we can do all this with an awl and just plug these things in is our scenery base is styrofoam. And we use ground goop, which I'm sure most of you guys have heard about. There's something on MR's site showing me actually mixing it, but that's a mixture we put about 1/8 of an inch thick on top of the foam. So it's very easy to just plug a hole in there or punch a hole in it and plant the tree. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You owe me money. After you put it in, you're gonna put dirt around it and just brush it around. And then we add sticks and leaves, and then we're going to apply alcohol and then some diluted white glue to glue everything in place. And when you're all done, this is what the scene looks like. So this is a scene with many hardwoods. We wanted to create the look of the trees going over the track and the train coming through. And you can see that that's what we accomplished. I think what we're going to do eventually is we're going to take this one tree that's in the middle and I'm going to replace that with a much taller tree. I mean, talking about size, I mean, John said, use the ones that look good. We can use any, I say the HO is up to 8 inches and an O scale can be up to 14, but I'm saying up to. You can put There's trees that are new growth. There's trees that go under the forest that are smaller. So there's all size trees. You just don't want to get too tall. It wouldn't look realistic. So here's an American red maple, the one that we saw in the beginning. And if you look very close at this, you're going to notice that the tips have red on them. So when I was painting the tips, I put a little bit of red up in there. And this trunk is basically gray because the American red maple has a very gray trunk, but there's hardly any brown in it. And this tree would turn a burgundy in the fall. And here's another picture of a sugar maple. Now we'll build the birch trees. Birch trees are very unique. Here's a real one. You'll notice that the crown is a little bit thinner than a maple and an oak. It's not as round and as full. And the bark has very unique markings. Very, very unique. And you'll notice also that a lot of the smaller branches here are black. These little ones, the new growth branches are black. And then underneath the bigger ones, it's also darker. And if you look at the bottom, a lot of times they're gray and cracked. So I'm going to use the same exact method that I did with the hardwood, except this one has a more pronounced main trunk from top to bottom. So again, I try to get the wire as far up as I can, but I'm going to thicken that up with the tube acrylics. And it has fewer branches. In this case, I'm making a double. So you're going to see me do both of them. So this is one side of the double, and you can see where I'm trying to thicken that all up using a white and an ochre, just because it's a base color. And I'm going to paint, using a white and an earth. So it's easier to start with kind of a white base. But you'll notice how thick I'm trying to make all this. And I'm trying to make the main trunk as thick as I can. So you may have to do it a few times. So when you're done, I'm going to paint it with the spruce green. And then again, I'm going to highlight with that light green. This is that light green that I love so much. Now comes the fun part. I'm gonna mix reefer white and earth, and I'm gonna do everything. You notice I haven't done these side branches because there's no need, because they're gonna be a different color. But all of the main branches are gonna be the mixture of white and earth. So then I go back and I take the same white in the earth, but I put more earth in it. You'll notice how much of the earth is in it. So all those smaller branches, I'm going to paint with that. Then the new growth gets the black or the gray, just like in the real picture that I showed you, the prototype. So all of these branches are going to be a dark color. It'll be black or gray. And then you do all of those unique markings. So when I do the brush strokes, you want to get a small brush, a very pointy brush. You want to take the black and you want to roll it. You see how I've rolled it on my palette? You want to roll it to get it just as fine a point as you can. And then you want to swipe quickly across it. And what you're going to get are those little tiny marks. The other ones, you can just randomly make marks up and down, across, do some up in the upper level of the trunk until you're happy with it. And if you make a mistake, you can always go back with the white and the ochre and go back over it. And there's the finished double birch. So now we're going to do a spruce tree. So what I use are all of those stems from making the other trees. I don't waste anything. All the pieces that I break off, I save, and I start making the trunk using the small skinny pieces, wrapping them with the wire, again using the 18 gauge. And then as I go down the trunk, I get bigger ones and bigger ones, a little thicker, a little more. So I start out skinny, And by the time you get done, it's bigger. And again, I made these, I think these were like 13 inches tall. And I stuck a nail in the bottom. Now I'm using the wire. You can either use a nail or the wire that sticks out. And then I'm going to take the acrylics again, and I'm going to thicken this all up and make it look like a trunk. Just glob it on and make in all of the, you know, the little gouges and the little whatever. So here it is wrapped in tape, and here it is after the acrylic. And again, that's got to dry overnight. And then you're going to paint it with the white and the black and the brown, going back and forth until you get something that you like. And there's the finished truck. So now I take the Caspia, there's the natural color that it comes in, and I painted it hunter green and spruce green on top of that. And then I took some of the small pieces off. And now this you have to be a little patient with. You have to put some wood glue on there, and you have to kind of hold it in place to create the top. It's going to get stickier and stickier as it dries. You got to hold it for a little while, but it doesn't take that long. Once that's dry, I take a number 75 pin vise. And this is very soft. Remember, it's all those pieces of peppergrass stems, and it's acrylic. So it's not hard. It's not like it's wood. And you're drilling into it. It's very easy to drill in. You make a little hole. You could use an X-Acto knife. You could use something else. I just happen to use this little drill. So you want to make a hole and take the branch and put some wood glue on it and stick them in the holes and just keep going around and around. Now the branches at the top kind of go up, the ones in the middle go out, and the ones at the bottom will go down. Dip it in the glue, like I said, and stick it in. Now, when I'm done putting each branch in, I do take a toothpick just to, I mean, these holes are so tiny. I mean, you can tell it's not that big of a trunk. So it's very tiny. It's a very delicate kind of operation. So I take a toothpick, put extra glue on, and kind of dab the glue underneath each branch just to make sure it's good and stuck. Now, when you look at the Caspia, the bottom of the Caspia plant has a lot of dead branches on them. So you just pick those off, and I painted them black because your tree will have dead branches at the bottom. So you can see where I've added them to the bottom. So now I'm going to paint the branches where they meet the trunk roof brown, because there's a little glob of glue on there, and you know, it looks better, it blends it better. And then I dull coat the whole thing, just like I did the hardwood trees, because you don't want any shiny bits on there. And then I take a cheap hairspray, just like John was showing you. Take the cheapest hairspray you can get and spray that on there. And then I sprinkle on the spruce green foam just to add more texture. And I like the color. And there's the finished spruce tree on the layout. And just as you were thinking that, you know, these are big trees, I can't make them in HO. Here's HO birch trees that I made. And these are for the woods. These aren't necessarily to stand out, you know, in somebody's front yard. These could be put up in the woods, but these are HO. These are only 6 inches tall. And there's some in fall colors. And it's not real bright. I made some hardwoods also. Some of the smaller ones that are a little bit brighter are hardwoods, but you can also see the birch that are in transition between summer and fall. So here's a photo gallery of some of the scenes on our layout that show the trees that I have made. This is a maple tree. This is, I think this was an elm tree. I'm not sure. Might have been an oak. And here's a whole bunch of white birch that I made as a little woods. And you'll notice that I made all these little ones underneath. to fill in. So you got the tall ones, you got small ones, and then you got all the brush, and the brush is made out of the leftover pepper grass, all the little branches that I pull off. I don't waste anything. I make bushes out of them. So I take those and spray paint them and paint the little branches brown, and they make great bushes for underneath the trees. That's a triple. That's the only triple birch I have on the layout. Here's another tree. And this one is a pond on a pond project that we're working on right now. This is the latest one. We haven't quite finished yet, but you'll notice this one is an eroded bank with the exposed roots. John was talking about that. These roots are made out of tomato plants. They're the tomato plant roots. They're awesome. I painted them brown and left the edges natural. And I've also got them displayed out back here. Some of these roots that are exposed because this is all eroded. And then coming down off of that bank into the water, this will be our pond water. And this is another part of the pond that we're working on, and this is going to be a woods. It's not quite finished, but that was when I put the trees in on a preliminary basis to see how they looked. John doing. And I still have to paint those. We had to pull them back out, but Lou wanted to get a picture of the train coming through the woods there. Now this is winter stuff. I didn't show you how to make that, but Lou wanted to show some of these pictures. I didn't do the pine trees, but I've done all the other bare trees because this is the winter side. And that's what a birch tree would look like without any leaves. And these are oak trees. Of course, in the winter, they don't lose their leaves. These are all oak trees that I made. Same technique, you just pull the leaves off. And then you have to paint the branches where the leaves were pulled off. And that just shows some in the background. Now here's one that I wanted to tell you guys about. This is my latest endeavor here. I made a pine tree. This is a woodland eastern white pine. This uses a combination of the two processes. So what I did is I started with the same trunk technique as I did for the spruce. I wrapped the trunk, but then I took an X-Acto knife and I took the caspia. I didn't even paint it or anything. I just took it plain. And I created the top of the crown, and then I put the branches in where I wanted them. This is in the woods now, so a lot of these, and then I added all these broken ones using the caspia branches or whatever other branches I had that looked good. And then I used the acrylic, just like I do on the hardwoods. I put the acrylic all the way up, tied all the branches together, thickened up all of these pine branches. And then I spray painted the green on the tree, just like the hardwoods. And then I painted everything by hand, just like the hardwoods. And then what we did is we used flocking and hairspray to get the needles on the end. And I just think it came out great. That's my very first one. And I'm going to be making a whole bunch more.
We use a grass master.
Yeah, the grass master to put these little needles on.
With flocking and hairspray.
They look just like real needles. I mean, you can blow that up real close and it looks like real pine needles. So these are, this is where we get our caspia and where we get our pepper grass. If you guys wanted to take a picture of that or whatever, that's our contacts for that. And then we're going to do a demonstration. I can't make a whole tree, obviously, it takes too long, but I want to show you how to pick the best pepper grass to start with the crown, how to create the best crown, how to put together the branches, and then how to connect them to the trunk, and then how to finish it up prior to applying the acrylic. I'm not going to put all the extra branches on because, you know, that would take too much time. Okay, so we stop sharing now.
It wasn't connected, that's why. didn't it work?
You're still sharing. You have to
Yeah.
unshare.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so now what do I need to do so you guys can see
We
me?
should go into speaker view. We'll
Yeah,
all
you
go
guys
to
go
speaker
into,
view.
okay, you guys go into
So
speaker
now we see
view.
you guys big screen.
Okay.
We go to speaker view.
No,
right?
we
No,
don't.
we do. You
No,
don't.
they do.
Oh, all right.
We don't.
Okay.
Okay, can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you. You got
Okay, all right.
like
So
a
here's-
wedding bouquet. Wedding bouquet.
Here's the pepper grass. See how nice and, flexible it is? All right, now here's an example of what you do not want to pick. All right, you see how this is? See the very top of that? You see how wide those branches are? That would not make a good tree. You don't want to pick that. What you're going to do is you can use these little individual ones to make individual branches later on. We'll pull all those off to make small branches or bushes. Okay, that's what you don't want to do. So what I've done is I've picked out some good ones. You see how small the tops are? You see how nice that looks? That's a real nice one. That's the problem. You got to pick out the nice ones. See how close these little branches are to each other? Can you see that, guys? All right. So I've got 3 of these because I'm going to make basically an HO tree. And you see how I said I don't take the little leaves off anymore? All right, that one doesn't even have any on it. This one only has a few on it. So all I do, I don't want this little guy, is I take my fingers, just pull these right down. Look at that. They come right off. Okay, there's one I got to pick off. Big deal. Okay, so now this one, I got this little branch down here. I don't want that. So again, I'm going to just slide these right off. And there's one right there. Just pick it off. Okay. So now I've got 3 nice clean branches. You want to leave them long like that. And you're going to fit them together, similar to what John did, to something that you really like, that's going to resemble a nice top to the tree. Remember, we're doing the top of the crown. So you make it look pretty nice. Okay, now you're going to take your wire, which is that 18 gauge wire. I'm going to lay it up in there, and I'm going to take, now what I did is I have brown, I'm using brown. I took that and I cut them in half. And I made them about, I don't know, what is that?
A quarter of an inch.
1.5 inches long.
1.5 inches long by a quarter.
Yeah, so I cut them in half. All right, so you put that up there, and now I use this, my finger, and I pull it with my thumb around it. And now I got fingernails, I know, which kind of helps. And then I pinch it together and then start going down. And as you go down, I'm pulling it a little bit to make it go all the way down like that. Right, now I'm going to take another piece because this is going to be the main trunk. I'm just going to go a little bit further and get it down, down, down. Okay, so far that's what it looks like. All right, you got this big long piece of wire and you got these little things here. So now I take a ruler, I'm going to say that's the top of my tree. And I want this tree to be, about 7.5 inches. So I go to the top, very top is going to be about 7.5. So this is where I want it to be. Now I don't even have, these aren't quite long enough yet. So I'm going to cut it a little bit lower than that because this is what's going to go into the styrofoam to be planted. So I'm going to cut that off. Okay. And I have a piece of styrofoam here, and I stick it in until I make my next branch. All right, so I've already picked out some to make a branch. All right, now you notice that these all have lower ones. I don't want those lower ones. So again, I'm going to take those off, but I save those for bushes. I don't throw them away. And then this has got one little thing on it. This one, I'm going to keep all of these I'm just going to pull off all those little leaves. And there's one little tiny one there. All right, so they're bare. And now since it's HO, I'm only going to use 2 when I make a branch. I don't use 3, it would be too thick. I only use 3 for the crown. And you put them together so they look kind of nice. Now I'm going to take the smaller wire. And I'm going to take my little piece and do the same thing I did with the crown. Take it like that. Take my thumb, pinch them together, start to wrap. Holding it with one hand, pulling it with the other. And you're not going to go too far because these are going to be branches. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit further on that one. It's going to cut off some of it. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to leave on the little stick, but I'm going to cut the wire off about there. Okay, so now I've got a branch. All right, so now we're going to take your crown. We're going to take this little branch, we're going to bend it, and we're going to stick it on and make it fit where you want it. You can take it like this, bend it back. Okay, it's a little branch. And say right about there. Okay, and then take another one of those little pieces and you're going to wrap it together using the same thing. Use your thumb, bring it around. Put them on. Okay, now I got a bunch of other ones made, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to keep on going with these. I made the branches earlier, and you're just going to stick them on until, put them where you think they're going to look good. Maybe right there, maybe over here. Nope, I think it looks better over here. Okay. And you're going to wrap that around. Okay, I got another one made here. I'm just going to keep on going. Starting to look like a tree, huh? Now I got another little one here. Now this time I'm going to use the bigger tape because I don't really need the small one. I'm going to take a bigger piece and I'm not going to cut it in half because now I'm getting down toward the trunk here. So I'm going to use the whole thing. Stick them all together really good. Okay, so you're going to keep on going and you can bend these. Like I say, you can bend them any way, make little structures out of them. So you see how it's starting to come together. Now, remember we measured that and we wanted it to be 7.5. So 7.5. So I want these branches to be right about here. So I'm going to cut those off. Okay, so that's how long I want that to be. Now you'll notice that if I didn't have any more branches, I'd have to thicken up this bottom. So what I do is I take all of these little sticks that I had extra, and I'm gonna just put it in there like that. And then I take a piece of tape and I just wrap it on. So I'm thickening up the trunk and I'm also rounding it out because you don't want it to be square, you want it to be round. So I know how long I want it to be, how tall I want it to be. I want it to be right about there. So I just cut off this extra one that I added, just cut it off. Okay, and you keep on going. It's getting kind of close. So see, you've got the wire to stick into your styrofoam. And I've got the trunk and I've got the branches. And you can keep on going with the branches. You know what I'm saying? I only added a few. You keep on going. Now, what I do to thicken this up, you see how this is skimpy right here? This is kind of skimpy. So I think I want a branch in there. So I put my finger behind it. But yeah, you gotta be really careful not to hurt yourself. Take an X-Acto knife and I make a little hole in it, okay, down into where I wrapped it. You do it very carefully. I'm used to doing it. Don't cut yourself. You make a hole in it. And then you'll take a branch and cut it off. And then you can stick this little branch in that hole. Of course, it's going to have wood glue on it. But right now I don't have any wood glue. But you see how that did that? See how it thickened that up? Look how much better that looks. All right, now you can do the same thing down in the trunk. Once you get down here in the lower part of the trunk, I'm just going to add a hole just so that you can see it. It's not going to look good because I haven't finished the whole tree. But you just take your X-Acto knife, twist it back and forth, make a hole, okay? Now these don't make good branches for wrapping, but they make great fill-in branches. The ones that are flat, kind of flat like that. See how it's kind of flat? They make great branches to fill in. So I made a hole and you can put that in there. You're gonna glue it in, but you can thicken it up all the way around that way as well. See that? So it's really not all that hard. And that's the end of the demo. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you these trees. So remember that woods that I was showing you where the train was coming in and the smoke, and I said it's right by the pond? Well, these are some of the trees that are going in there. Here's a big one. This is before I've painted them, but look at the size of that one. That's number 10. And then there's a bunch of small ones that I made that are going to go in the woods. Here's like a little double. And then these are smaller. These could be a finished HO tree, but they're just going to happen to be undergrowth in the O scale. So these are some of the finished ones where I've painted this. I've done the acrylic, but I haven't done the hand painting yet. And this is what the Caspia looks like. There's kind of two different things. This Caspia has a thicker top, but see all the dead branches at the bottom? Lots of dead branches at the Caspia. This stuff really stinks too. But some of these I would use probably to make those pine trees, because we're going to put that flocking on with the hairspray. It's going to be nice. So that's it. Any questions? I can't hear anybody.
You have to unmute. Yeah, unmute.
I gotta unmute.
I don't see anybody using it.
John, you got muted in the middle of what you were saying.
Yeah, somehow I got muted. I
Okay.
just said I didn't see any chat boxes anywhere.
You didn't see any chat, but everybody's probably sleeping. We had such a hard
We
time
lost
getting.
about
going.
half the crowd now. We're down to 24. I think Lou's about ready to fall over too, I think.
I think so.
That's great presentation.
Oh, that was fantastic.
I think it was awesome. And now you see why I told you they were going to blow you away with their pictures.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true museum quality right there.
Oh, thank you.
Could you give us your sources again?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
We have to share again, right?
You have to share again. Good luck with that.
Maybe you can just tell us.
No, I can show you, I think.
You should be able to do it.
Yeah.
There you go. Look at that.
And
Yep.
there it is.
And we got your picture on the other
We'll-
screens. We got
We'll
both.
take this recording and put it up on the hub.
Yeah, it definitely is being recorded.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Take this, put it up on the YouTube channel.
All set?
All set. Thank you.
All right.
So I have a question. Cheryl, you said that comes pre-preserved with glycerin or something?
Yes, yeah, glycerin. In fact, the last batch that I got was actually wet with glycerin. We had to lay it all out in the sun to dry. It was all gooey.
Oh, they probably pulled it too early.
Yeah,
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 they packaged it.
definitely pickled.
The winter oaks, the stuff that you saw that we called winter oaks, Bob Ham gave us those. You can pick this stuff if you go to college. If you want to take a quick trip out to Colorado, he actually picked that peppergrass from a field by the Cumbres and Toltec Railroad. He has a photograph of himself out there.
Yeah,
It was the end of the year, it was in the fall, and the stuff grows wild, just like goldenrod does around here. He just picked it from a field. He had it hanging upside down in his garden shed behind the house. He gave us a couple bundles of it. But you can use just pickled stuff too, but the wild stuff that hasn't been touched is perfect, absolutely
Yeah.
perfect for old oak.
the
for
color, the
dead oak
color's
trees.
great, but it's, of course, it's more fragile because
Yeah.
it's not pickled. So you have to be a little more gentle with it because the leaves will fall off. But that makes it nice too, because you're taking a lot of the leaves off the top and they come off really easily.
Well, if you're ever going to do the glycerin pickling, I remember as a kid when I did it for lichen, you can
Mhm.
buy industrial grade glycerin, which is different than the drugstore glycerin that's all purified and food grade, basically.
Mhm.
You get the industrial grade and it's much cheaper and you can buy it by the gallons. And you used to have to heat it, if I remember correctly. You used to have to
Oh,
heat it
wow.
on the
Wow.
stove to get it to soak in better. And then you had to lay them all out on newspapers, let them dry in the
Oh,
sun.
yeah.
One other
yeah.
thing I wanted to mention was about the white birch trees. The reason I was really concerned before Cheryl started making trees, how to come up with a white birch, because the reason we have so many white birch on the railroad, and this is one nice thing about being able to make trees to this extreme, is that the Sandy River and Rangy Lakes Railroad existed primarily because of the white birch trees. They were the trees that were used to make clothespins, toothpicks. One of the biggest toothpick mills in the world was in Strong, Maine, and they were all done with white birch. And the white birch had taken over the forest again now, where they were all logged off back in the day when the railroad existed. But Strong was, I believe I read somewhere, I bought a book on toothpicks, and they mentioned that Strong, Maine was the primary source of the Forster toothpick mill. It was the primary source of toothpicks before they all went to
It
China.
must have been used for paper making too, I'm guessing, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they did what they called wood turnings, toothpicks, clothespins, that type of thing. But that's why we have so many white birch on the railroad.
Well, related to that, so Cheryl, you could make the aspen tree. Aspen trees is a similar tree, except the markings on them are quite different. I think they're vertical, the black mark,
No, the
horizontal.
first of all, they're shaped more like a cone, okay? And they have the one stem that kind of goes all the way up to the top. That's why I was saying you have to try to fit, it's a little tricky to get that first wire all the way to the top, because you're trying to wrap it around the branches, kind of pull it down and just wrap it all the way around. It's a little tricky to get that. And then the markings on the trunk are a lot less than a white birch. And then they have this little kind of like kind of goes up and down like half a triangle, and then with a dot in the middle. That's what the marking looks like. They have very few of those little stripe things, little straight stripes. They have a few of those, but not as many. But they have those little half triangles with a little dot in the middle. So
are the aspens more yellow than white? Or
no, they're pretty white.
Pretty much the same.
White. Yeah, pretty much the same color.
So the bottom line is anybody who's small in Colorado or whatever, you can do the same techniques you did on the birch, just modify it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So when do you go into production?
No, I don't do that.
I think probably half the people here want to buy your trees right now.
I know. I know. I have made a few for friends. I made aspens for a friend, and I made well, Jason, I made some for him. I made some fall trees. The fall trees are actually a lot of fun. I really like experimenting with the fall colors.
Well, now we got the leaf likes experiment with now too.
Yeah. But when you make a fall tree, you don't make it like you were saying, you don't make it all red or all orange or all yellow. It just doesn't look realistic. You have to put the green in there as well. And you have different colors, and you have some leaves that are starting to fall off at the top, and some of them are starting to turn brown. I mean, you have to do a little research, actually go online and look at the trees, what they really look like, and then try to copy that.
Cool. I want to know, how does everybody else that's in the audience here today, how does everybody else make their trees? Do you make them similar to these methods? Do you make them a totally different method? Or do you just avoid it altogether?
Mine are just terrible.
Well, compared to Cheryl's, we're all terrible. So.
Some of you have seen that big sugar maple that I have on my Rowley module. I made that out of a quadruple O welding cable, fine copper wire. It's all twisted, the trunk and all the branches. Yeah. And then I used Woodland Scenic's, the foliage that you can stretch out.
Yeah, the foliage net.
The net foliage. And then I sprinkled on ground foam of various kinds. I don't have any of the white pines that I've made from the Phragmites reed on my modules, but I do have them on my layout. And, the Phragmites reed tops, if you basically soak them in, you dry them out and then you soak them in green spray paint, and they look like a young pine, the kind of field-grown pines that you see in an old field growing up, which I needed a lot of for my mid-50s layout in coastal Massachusetts. They don't do a wonderful job of making the full-grown trees like Cheryl did there. But if you want to do a clump of pine growing up, pioneering in a new field, you can do it that way. And I've used some blueberry twigs, again with the stretchable netting foliage, and then more of the ground foam sprinkled on with hairspray. Swave hairspray is a nice cheap one, and scary hair, but it's fine. It's fine for modeling. And I've used those for apple trees because the way the blueberry twigs fork is you get a shape which isn't bad for a standard apple tree, not the real dwarf ones.
I want to mention one thing. You guys are out in Massachusetts, Boston area. I know Mike has lined this all up. If you ever get a chance, I've made 3 or 4 trips there. Cheryl has gone there twice, the Harvard Forest.
Oh, yeah.
And some of you may have heard of it. It's the Fisher Museum at the Harvard Forest. And it's in, I would say, north central Massachusetts. Mike knows the location. of
Well, it's on
the
Peter,
address.
it's in Petersham on Route 32.
Mhm.
If,
below
if you're into scenery,
Oh,
Well,
Mike
we're
is-
going to.
what's that?
Well, we're going to.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, it's
It's-
unbelievable.
Yeah, it's.
Go in
it's-
and turn the lights on
It's
yourself.
not model railroads, but it is some of the best scenery work I have ever
Mhm.
seen, and it was done by this in the CCC days in the 1930s, and it is absolutely. It's
Beautiful.
about, what is it, like about 15 or 20 modules?
Well, it's a number of scenes. It depicts forestry management and the history of forests.
Mhm.
It is.
One
it
thing they did, if my math is correct, which it usually isn't, if you built a little 2x4 module, it would take you about 4 years to build one by yourself, to build one with the standards they did. It's just wonderful scenery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
it
And
is just-
the people that are there will talk your ear off about it. They
yeah, and
love
it's,
it.
it's free admission. It's
Yeah,
on the
it's the
grounds of
best.
the college. It's
the
in,
best.
it's at the location of their.
Yeah, Harvard
forest.
University has a
The
school. They call it silviculture, but it's forestry management. And Harvard University has a branch out there.
Yeah, some of the best scenery I've ever. Mike, you showed us that. You were the first
Yeah.
one to bring
It's
us.
a beautiful place. I haven't been there for years, but
Yep.
it'll be there probably as long as there's a Harvard
Yeah,
University.
we went there with you,
Yeah.
and Dick Ell and I went there with you years ago.
Mhm.
Well, we're
It was
going
well
to.
worth the trip.
Oh,
for you
yeah.
guys.
All these guys live too far east. That's like Western Massachusetts to them.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
It's nice though. It's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
and I want, before this is over with, I want to thank. I don't know who it was that talked us through getting this
Yes,
keynote
thank
presentation
you.
on, but thank you very much.
Thank you. One more thing I was going to say about the Harvard Forest. The methods you people are using are really not terribly different than the methods they used.
Mhm.
One of the things they did that was neat, for leaves, they made little photo etchings.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
made branches with photo etchings and twisted them together.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually have a book. They have a soft cover book. I bought it while I was there. And it wasn't that much. I know, $15 or something like that.
Yeah, you could probably
With
get,
photographs of all of the modules,
you could probably get
all
the
of the dioramas, and just a short description of what you're talking
I
about.
bet you could get the book through the Harvard University
Yeah,
Press.
you probably could. I bought it.
Probably all those academic books are available forever.
Yeah.
You know.
Mhm.
But thank you guys for coming.
Well,
Yes,
thank you
well,
very
thank
much
you
for-
for asking us.
For having us.
Thanks for coming back up north again and east.
And to mention a name, Eric Whitney is our Zoom coordinator, and he was the man on the Mac who was providing the advice there.
Well, thank him
Oh,
very
thank
much if
you.
he's
Thank
going.
you.
Yeah.
Those are not,
Save
but
the day there, Eric.
he saved the
Yes,
day.
Eric, thank you.
My
Oh,
job.
he's still here.
He's there.
Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you so much.
By the way, you two are hilarious together. I love it. Cheryl, you're actually a very good. And Lou, watching you in the back was just like almost like watching Burns and Allen.
Well, we had a bet that he couldn't stay quiet, so he lost the
No,
bet.
no,
Yeah, we figured that. I figured that.
I was pretty.
I can relate. I can relate.
Well, just the facial expressions, but
I was very quiet while you were on, John.
Yeah, I know. I heard a few chuckles out of Cheryl. But
Thanks a lot,
thank
everybody.
you guys for coming and have a merry.
I think Cheryl now is going to be the second saint. They already called my wife the saint, and now we got to call Cheryl the saint.
Right.
And you know why? Because they got to put up with the rest of us. You know?
That's true. That's true.
Dave Inslee has posted a link to the Harvard Forest
Oh,
website on the
great.
chat.
Great.
It's well worth
There it
it.
is.
Great.
Every time we get up in the Northeast, we go there now.
Harvard.ed. Just go to Harvard University site and find it.
Right. Well, everybody have a great holiday as
Yeah.
best as you can.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you again
We'll
for
hope
inviting
for
us.
a happier new year.
Well, they've already got the white Christmas there.
Yeah. I know. That's nice.
Thanks
Kinda
for
miss it.
inviting us, Mike.
I miss
Appreciate
it a little bit.
Thanks again, you know.
Well, you all stay in touch, and I hope to be up at the with Mike and some of you. Last year we were at the Big E show, the Springfield,
Oh, yeah.
and hope to do that not next month, but a year from now. So
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
A year from now, it should be okay.
Yep.
Hope
Yep.
so.
Let's hope so.
We'll pick
Yeah,
up
come
good
come
deals.
to the NER convention in October during foliage season.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Westford,
Cool.
Massachusetts.
Where's it going to be?
Westford, Massachusetts.
And where is that in relation to
Near,
Springfield?
it's near
Right,
Lowell.
it's
Near
right
Lowell.
next to Lowell.
Oh, near
Near Lowell.
Lowell. I used to have an aunt and uncle live in Lowell.
Lowell has some really interesting industrial exhibits. It's a national park.
Yeah.
And they have
And we're going to be
canal
running fan trips on the trolley line that carries people around the national park because they couldn't put parking lots at all the buildings. And at least if it was the way it was last year, or the way it was planned for this year, I'm going to be operating one of the trolleys.
Cool.
you know, and they have a neat canal boat ride too,
Yep, that's good.
and mill exhibits and things like that. You could go in a building with draped balloons and get deafened and stuff. No, but it's really a neat place to visit.
Well, that's cool. I hope we can get to California. I'm thinking about, my wife and I think might go to the California National this year. But you're right. I'm not sure that's going to happen or yet. But
I
they're
think
not
it's
making a decision for a few more months yet. But it's
I don't think they're getting to large groups until at least the fall.
yeah, I think it's looking pretty dicey right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, remains to be seen when New Hampshire. I'm quite sure I'm going to be 65 by the time that comes around in Cow Hampshire.
65. That's just a spring chicken.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. You could join Medicare now.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll let you know how it's been.
They're still talking about.
And
All
the
right.
other thing for the other nice thing for the convention is that God willing and the creek don't rise, the Franklin and South Manchester is going to be open.